And so I'll take another chance to welcome all of you to Authenticity Church. We are a Bible-believing Christian church here in the ranch. We've done, I think, about 6 weeks of services, and we would love for all of you to come this Sunday at 10:30. But I'm thrilled to have our three guests here tonight. I'm going to introduce them real quick. We have Nick, who is an Agnostic Professor, University Professor. And next we have Paul, who is a Modern Orthodox Jew and member of the High IQ Society. I didn't make these up. And then we have my good friend Robert, and he is a Bible believer. And so tonight we have three big questions that we're going to ask, and each person's going to get 5 minutes to answer. And then we're going to allow them to ask each other questions, and then we're going to allow you to ask some questions. And the way to do that, if I can get my head out of the way, is you can text Viewpoints. That's tonight's YouTube show. You can text us. If we can get the number up there one more time, please. You'll see it on the screen. Send me a text. I'll go through and try to keep them short. I actually had last time someone literally typed probably an essay. So just simple, quick question. Feel free to ask anything based on what you've heard tonight, based on the questions that we're going to be asking them. And I think that's what's going to make this a lot of fun is when we get the audience to participate. So are you guys ready? You excited? Yeah. All right, good. Okay. So I'm going to work my way this way. We'll start with Nick. And the first question that we have tonight is, who is God? And we're going to give you 5 minutes to answer.
So I'm the first one to go, and you can see in the continuum that the guy that has the more convincing to do has to be the last one to speak, right? First, I want to explain a little bit what agnostic means. Agnostic doesn't necessarily mean that I do not believe in God. I perceive God as an unknown, so I decide not to choose whether or not his existence is there for us to witness or to believe. Versus if you look at an atheist will say that he doesn't believe in God, God does not exist. So there's a distinction, and the distinction has to do with the fact that I do see that there's a force that is superior to ours, that created humanity and created our planet. And however, because I cannot scientifically prove or disapprove that that force is what we relate to as God, I choose not to take God for granted and say that God is the creator and of heaven and earth and of mankind and humanity and have this omnipresence that I need to worship. So it's not to say that I don't believe there's a possibility that God exists, but it's really to say that I don't need to take interpretations of people's faith as a factual determination to say that God exists, and then to go further with the other step of indoctrination, saying that I want to worship God based on a series of religious beliefs that are pure interpretation. So that's really my view as to where I stand with God and where I stand as to the representation of God by different religions. Some religions say that there's only one God, one and only one true God, right? Other religions say there's multiple gods. People don't really tend to agree what the definition of God is, and when people can agree on something, then you cannot prove the hypothesis of the true existence of God. Therefore, I choose to say that God is unknown. And as human beings, we're of all the species that exist, we're very intelligent, and we have this desire for knowledge. And so we form all these hypotheses, and when you have hypotheses that cannot be solved, it gives an opportunity for certain people to take advantage of the ignorance. And unfortunately, the hierarchy of the position of God that is placed by religion puts God as first, put the intermediary between you and God, which could be the priest, the pastor, the prophet, as the only intermediary between you and God. And then you, as the person who worships, you're the last one and you pick up the crumbs, right? So if I was to decide that for some reason or another I changed my opinion and I see as God existing, then I would really want to make sure that I have my relationship directly with God and not through an intermediary. And that I don't need an intermediary to prove the existence of something if I really have a faith into it. So to me, really, what's the main key point to take out of my personal beliefs is that I don't believe that you need to believe into the existence of God to have faith or to be part of an association with people that have commonalities with you. You can choose not to know what God is and still have a happy life, still believe in creation, still believe in what is right and wrong, and you can still have a morality and a direction in your life without the need to know exactly everything and have everything defined for yourself.
Very good. Paul?
Me?
Go ahead.
Same question. Who is God?
Same question. Who is God?
Who is God? God to me, first I should start with, I am not your regular modern Orthodox Jew. I guess I would say I'm a more modern, ultra-modern Orthodox Jew, you could say. So whatever I say today does not reflect the other 1 million modern Jews. This is my opinion. So God is, to me, the creator of all. And he is, you can say, the executive producer and chairman of life. Everything. He is in control of everything. And he gave the keys to life, to human life and animals, and he created everything. And then it was up to us to have the freedom of choice to treat what he gave us as however we want it. And he once in a while interferes as he sees fit. So he is more like the chairman, that's what I say. Because, chairman is not a role that is actively engaged in its company, but he interferes as needed to make big decisions in one's lives or on the planet Earth itself, but it mostly just rolls in just as he created it. Day one and until today, according to the Hebrew calendar, 5,778 years later, we're still rolling on our own. And so God is that. Also, God is a father figure. That's the other aspect of God. Somebody that if you truly believe in him, you talk to him, you go to him. And I'm not saying he will grant you everything. He will probably deny you most of the things you ask for. He will only give you things when you truly need them. As a good chairman, he'll interfere when it's needed, or he might never interfere in your life. And that's why we don't understand how he works. And that's who God is to me.
Okay. Robert, who is God?
Who is God? From my perspective, these are personal opinions. I would say he's the creator, primarily, first and foremost. He's a creator. Creator of life, creator of everything that is seen and unseen. Yes, omnipotent, omnipresence, omniscient, all those things are attributed to him as well. But that's not what really makes his character lovable to me. First and foremost, he describes himself as a God of love. So he's a creator that not only has authority and power, but he also has the characteristics of a loving father and a loving husband. If you look at the way he creates things, you look at the leaf, not the leaf, the feather of a peacock, and the way that is designed. This is a God that cares immensely about color and detail and art and beauty. He cares about sounds and music and tastes. He's extremely detailed. He says he has the numbers of our hair counted. Each human being, he knows how much hair, how many hairs you have on your head. So this is a being that is extremely sensitive and caring towards his creation. When we say he's a loving father, we're talking about someone who protects the innocent, protects the weak, fathers the orphan. He's someone who punishes evil, punishes bullies, punishes criminals and criminality. He has to deal with evil in the world. As a father, he's also kind and he's patient, even when kids don't really deserve it, even when we reject him and reject his love, he still holds out his hand and gives us another chance. As a loving husband, I would describe him as someone who's very generous, and he's looking for a certain intimacy with humanity. He calls himself the husband, humanity is the wife, and the intimacy that's experienced between a husband and wife, I think that's also part of his character, that he's looking to have a connection with his creation on a physical level, not just spiritual, but also physical. He's generous with his attributes. He's not stingy. He shares his name, his image, his wealth, the ability to procreate. He actually has shared that with mankind. He doesn't hog up authority and want to control everything himself. He's actually very generous with that element, and he gives mankind the opportunity to create things, maybe not out of anything or out of nothing, but we could take pieces of raw materials that he's given us and build things like airplanes and rocket ships and have a tremendous amount of satisfaction being partakers of co-creators in his world. It's like a husband and a wife. They get married, they get a house, and they build it together. They go shop for the furniture. They build it together. And that's the way I perceive him as at least with this planet. He doesn't give us authority over the whole universe, but to a limited sense to this planet, he does co-rule it with us. He's not a dad that just takes off and leaves. The idea, what is God, that he makes the world go round and then he leaves. I don't see that as a loving father. I see somebody that sticks around even though we don't deserve it. We've told him to leave and get away from us, and he's gently starting to want to reintroduce himself into our lives if we allow him to do so, but he won't push his way in. He's got elements of mercy and grace. Gives us mercy, as in doesn't punish us when we actually deserve it. Graceful, he gives us things that we don't deserve. So overall, in conclusion, I would say he's life, he's love, and God is light. If you want to reduce it to 3 words.
Outstanding. I think all 3 of you did a good job in introducing yourselves and putting out your viewpoint on who God is. And as they're talking, I'm sure you're thinking some questions, and you have some, you could ask Nick one, you could ask any question, and then if you'll just text it to 858-997-0757, what we're going to do is we're going to go on to the next 2 questions, and a lot of questions here. We're going to go on to the next 2 questions. I'm going to give them 5 minutes, but as they're talking, feel free to text them. They're going to come in, and I'm going to get these, and we'll read as many of them as we can. But I want to keep moving forward, so let's go ahead to the second question. Okay? What is the Bible? Nick, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Always going to start with the guy that has the facts, right? So, the Bible is a collection of texts, of books that are both factual, allegoric, metaphorical, and most importantly, that are very open to interpretation. And it's been written thousands of years ago. Some believe that the Bible is a continuum, right? If you go from me to Robert, I believe that the Bible is a great book. He believes that the Bible is factual in the Old Testament, and he believes that there's a continuation with the Bible, with the New Testament, and that Jesus was sent as the Messiah, and the Messiah is coming again. The Jews won't believe that, and that's a clear distinction between the three of us. So if you look at the Bible as the most sold book in history, it means that it has a lot of great stories. One of the greatest story of salvation of the human race, of mankind, and the liberation of the Jews, and so forth. But what the Bible is really, to me as an agnostic, it is a methodology to educate the less educated, the more ignorant, into understanding the difference between what is right and wrong. It gives people a moral compass on knowing what hurts to somebody else, how to respect your neighbor, how to respect your parents, and gives you a distinction between heaven and hell, the yin and the yang, punishment and reward. It's all the same concept of proving that if you do the right thing, you will be rewarded, and if you do the wrong thing, you will be punished. It's a mean that was created by humans to civilize the uncivilized and to allow them, by allowing interpretation of the Bible, it allows people to be creative and to share into their experiences and knowledge with the others. And what the Bible was not made to do was to separate these interpretations into different religions and create wars. And that is one of the issues with truly believing what's written in the Bible. If I take, for instance, the book of Genesis that says that God created heaven and earth for 6 days, and then the seventh day, it's the day to rest and worship God. Well, nothing was created in 7 days. You want to create a human being, it takes 9 months in the womb of a woman, and you can't change that by intelligent design. You can't change that by anything. So the essence of creation in the book of Genesis is only an interpretation as to what's fundamental in our life, in our purpose in life, and the foundation of life is life. It's creation, which is procreation. And that is what, to me, the book of Genesis is interpreted as. And the seventh day that you're used to rest is the human body cannot work indefinitely and live a good life. You need to have time to rest. You need to sleep. You need to take a day off. It's the first labor union pact that says that you cannot abuse people, and you need to respect people and give them some rest so that they can recharge and be better persons.
Very, very good. I want to be fair to everyone's time, so we're at 5 minutes, but I'll give you an extra 30 seconds too on your side.
need.
So I wanted you to finish your thought. I think it's really interesting to hear your viewpoint on it.
Well, my thought is that for Bible believers, Bible is the most important fundamental books. For other people, like Muslims, the Quran is the fundamental books. For Robert, that book extends to the New Testament. For him, it stops there. The Bible is really written for people to have their own interpretation. And as an agnostic, my choice is to try to understand and interpret for myself without choosing to be part of a religious association.
Okay, very good. Paul, what is the Bible?
What is the Bible? First of all, I would like to start with, if you see, both of them brought notes, and they told me I couldn't bring notes, but that's fine. That's fine. I may add that 30 minutes ago I was on a plane, so I didn't, but I can get this, no problem. So I will start. Yes, thank you. So I'll start with what is the Bible? So what is the Bible? So the Bible to me is notes of a group of prophets and kings that were divinely inspired by God, pretty much. So I will tell you what the Bible means to me, and I will decodex because that's what us Jews do. We go into little detail. So the Bible, which I'm talking about, just this Bible, the Tanakh, the Old Testament, has the 5 books of Moses. Moses, greatest prophet in history, according to the Jews. So the 5 books of Moses, you can sum it up pretty much basically in Genesis, which is the creation, and the creation of the world, creation of our tribe, creation of our lineage. Then you can go more into the Exodus book, which is what happens when you screw up your creation. You end up in a tough situation, and now you got to get out of it. So God saved us there. Boom, moving on. He's like, okay, I'm not going to save you again till Leviticus, Deuteronomy, which is more of, these are the set of rules. You got to obey them. And these rules till today, if one nation calls itself civilized, they obey the rules in the Leviticus. Written by Jews, no matter what country you say, if the rules were not there, they were first there, and then all constitutions of the world that are so-called first world countries obey the Leviticus laws. And there's no argument in that. Then you move more into the prophets, which the prophets are different people all over the place, like Isaiah, which some of his prophecies have been fulfilled, some of his prophecies are in the future, and I do take these prophecies serious, and you have to, they are like a compass that tells you where the wind is going and gives you a time to reflect and say, okay, this sounds pretty much like what's going on in the world right now, so I better get my stuff together as Isaiah might be right, so I better be sure. Then you move more into, those are the prophets. Prophecies that happen or didn't happen. Or haven't happened, sorry. Then you move more into the kings, such as King David. First big king, we had Saul, but we don't like to think about him much. So we have King David, first big king, and his lineage, and Christians believe Jesus came through that lineage, but Jesus didn't have a father, so it's kind of hard to come from that lineage without a dad, but that's another story. So the kings were divinely inspired. Some of them were wise, like Solomon. David was very, very close to God, and he wrote the book of Psalms, which is many Christian and Jewish praise books and songs and prayers are inspired on his connection that he had with God. And the rest is just stories, historical evidence of the tribe and its times up until Chronicles and Malachi, and which is where the book stops. And yeah, so the Bible is pretty much that. It's a compilation of prophets, kings, all divinely inspired, which were given this book to, in a way, inspire others and give a set of rules into the world, so the laws of this book and the stories of this book would be obeyed by everyone. And until those laws are not obeyed, you will not see redemption of Messiah. And until those prophecies, Messiah won't be here, and we'll still live in a bad world as we live today. Period.
Thank you. Robert, what is the Bible?
What is the Bible? To me, the Bible is God's attempt at communicating with mankind. As much as we've rejected him and his message, he keeps trying to communicate with us. At the beginning, he was doing it verbally, and then after we stopped listening, he starts writing things down, hoping that we wouldn't forget. Imagine, imagine a lady of the house using a vacuum cleaner, and it's like the red devil. This vacuum cleaner doesn't work. It kicks dust up in the air. She spends $100 a month just to repair it, and it's been nothing but a disaster. But she's just loyal to this red devil vacuum cleaner. And once a month, this vacuum cleaner salesman comes over and is offering her a free vacuum cleaner. And this vacuum cleaner is perfect. It never breaks. and she doesn't take it. She just insists on using her Red Devil vacuum cleaner. So he drops off a business card and says, if you ever change your mind, call me. So after he shows up to her house 66 times, that's that book. It's God's, there's 66 books of his way of trying to get through a thick-headed skull of humanity. How did he write it? Did he write it personally himself? No, he actually used people to do it. He used men, flawed men, imperfect men. So that means that their passions, their desires, their weaknesses, their strength, their fallibility, weaknesses, that carries through the text because it's a joint text. It's co-written by God and these imperfect men, and that's actually what makes it so precious. It's not this big bad God in the sky that zaps the book to the planet. He co-writes it with fallible human beings. It's kind of like Cindy Crawford's got the mole. Okay, it's an imperfection, but that's actually what makes it what makes her beautiful. So the imperfections of the book, if we want to use that word, are in there because it's injected as a co-written manuscript. Which people more specifically, which people did God use to write this? He used Jews. He only used Jews. I know that stings a little bit if you're a Gentile, but bottom line is there's 66 books. He only likes 39 of them. I particularly like all 66 of them, and all 66 of them were written by Jewish people. Now, Gentiles don't like the fact that they've kind of been excluded from the Bible writing game, but the more prideful you are, the more it stings. We go up to God and we're pulling like a spoiled toddler. We're pulling on God's pants and like, hey, can we write some? And God's like, no. Can we add some to the word? And God's like, no. But can we subtract some? And God's like, no. It's like, and then our hatred towards them builds up. It's like, well, can we at least kill some Jews and take their money? And God's like, no. So the Gentiles, we tuck our tail underneath and between our legs, and we go away. And after a while, we humble ourselves, and we're reading it. We're being blessed by these literatures and these books. So we go back to God with a humble heart after a while. We say, would you allow us to translate it into other languages? And God's like, I don't know. All right, but before you push print, I want to review everything. I want to authorize it. I don't trust you people. So that's as close as the Gentiles have got. They've gotten allowed to put some authorized translations of the book on the planet. And so where are we at today? We have the originals that are written in Hebrew by Jews, and then there's a lot of corrupted manuscripts of people that have attempted to add to the word or subtract from the word. And there's been a few authorized translations as the global language shifted from, let's say, Greek to Latin or to English. God has allowed those translations into the global communication language of today. So today, for example, the global language is English. So we have a book that's called the Holy Book, translated out of the original tongues. That's Gentiles speak, for the Jews wrote it. And it's known as the authorized version. So this is the authorized version for the English-speaking world. And like Nick said, it's the most popular book in human history. It's the most influential book in human history. Top seller of New York Times every year running. They got so tired of listing it as book number one that now they just says, let's just assume that the Bible's number one and start with number two. So number two is really number one. The point is, this book has been on the planet for now 400 years. It's been the most influential book that humankind has ever touched. And whether you're agnostic or whether you're an Orthodox Jew or a Muslim or whatever religion, just for the sake of the literary contribution that this book has made to the planet, if you want to call yourself an educated person, you have to have at least read it once. So if you got time to watch Seinfeld and Friends, and you haven't read this book once,
Seinfeld and Friends are both written by Jews.
just like this is.
Good. Okay. So that's our. Let's go ahead and give him a round of applause. I think it. To get up in front of a group of people and just to make yourself transparent about what you believe takes a lot of courage. So I admire all of these guys. And so now for the next 15 minutes, we'll go ahead and we'll allow you guys.
Aren't we missing a question?
One more.
Oh.
One question.
I'm glad. Yeah, and this is a good question actually. Okay. I'm glad you remembered that. So the last question that we have for tonight is: describe the perfect world leader. Nick, we'll go ahead and let you go.
Well, it's really hard to describe something perfect when you live in an imperfect world. So I don't believe there's true perfection and that we can describe the perfect world either. But we can describe what is a right, a just, a fair leader, and that would be someone who looks at everybody as created equal, that doesn't have any prejudice against sex, race, religion, beliefs, disbeliefs, no judgments for people doing sometimes the wrong thing, understanding that the human make mistakes. So it has to be with someone that has extreme empathy, compassion, but more importantly, it has to be someone who can really tell the difference between what is right and what is wrong. And so it has to be someone that has an extreme moral compass and the ability to make very hard decisions for the benefit of humanity, and really for what is right for us, even though that us as an individual sometimes we don't see what is right for us, and it takes someone superhuman to be able to tell you or to determine for you what is the right thing for you to do. And so that comes with great leadership. And by great leadership, it's someone who serves for a cause. And that cause is humanity. And that is an incredible responsibility. And, but more importantly, the world leader has to be someone who's not indoctrinated. It cannot be someone who believes to a single religion. Because religions, as a kid, you go to Catholic school and the priest tells you that religion is something that unites us into a faith, into a belief of what the priests tell you that is the right thing. In effect, and it's been proven through our life and through the life of the people before us, religion is what separates people. And it separates people based on a set of beliefs that are interpretation of something that was written, or that are created to take advantage of the ignorant. A lot of the religious people use religion as a means to acquire power. Constantine took the Roman Empire and opened up Christianity to the world in his own conquest to acquire the rest of the world. He made a deal with the Christians in Persia, and that created a unification force for him to go and be able to get more control over his people. And in the same way, he decided to share the bread with his people, just like Jesus Christ did. And he did it because it gave him a power over his people. And he did that by taking advantage of them so that he could collect more taxes, tell them to work harder for him, and it was helping him to go and conquer the world. So you cannot use religion as a means to acquire power. Therefore, we have to reject religion from the moral compass of controlling the world as a whole. And I think once people agree that you don't need to have a unique interpretation into what was written in the Bible or what your relationship between you and God has to be, is when we will have a world that is at peace. And that is really what I believe is going to end conflicts around the world. It's not the adaptation of one single religion. is the acceptance that there's not one true interpretation of what you're reading, and that you don't need to be part of a religion to seek the truth and to have a moral compass to decide what is right and wrong for you.
Very good. Thank you, Nick. Paul, describe the perfect world leader.
So the perfect world leader is going to sound a lot different than his world leader. And again, this is just my opinion, and I have been asked this question a lot. In my friendship with Robert, he's always trying to tell me how his world leader looks. That's, I still think, one of our biggest disagreements. So, how my perfect world leader is. My perfect world leader is stronger than any leader you have ever seen in mankind, in human history. This perfect world leader will unite everybody, and he will throw religion out. That is true. He will come and save everyone from whatever destruction is going through the world at that time. And he will do this by force and by, think of him as a good dictator, if that makes any sense. He will just come and conquer, and what a great U.S. Army, best army in the world, can conquer in a week, he can do in a minute. And he will be like that. And all world leaders will either bow to him or he will kill them and take them out of the world and take over their countries. One by one, piece by piece, till he has the world under his control. And he will have the world under his control, and yes, there will be bad guys that will die, and there will be the biggest war in human history when this world leader shows up. And a lot of people, and this doesn't sound like the hooray, we're all going to be saved and going to have pina coladas, play the harp in heaven. But this is the fact, and a lot of you might die, and myself, I might die. Who knows? But there'll be a war that will kill a lot of people, include my people. It says in there, 3/4 of my people will be killed, of the Jewish people. And the Holocaust was like 44%. So it'll be a lot worse than the Holocaust. So this world leader will be very, very strong, and people will not understand what he's doing until he does it, and everybody will love him, praise him, and thank him for saving the world and its existence. So will he have some loving and some other factors? Yes. He will be a loving leader, and he will not become a leader immediately. He will suffer at the beginning, as you guys say, but I believe that it will be a suffering in somebody's lifetime. One lifetime. Not with a 2,000-year break, but with somebody's lifetime. So he might grow up in a difficult home, and he will suffer. And he will grow into, and this suffering will teach him values in life that will make him a bigger world leader. And at some period in that 80 years of his human life, God will reveal himself to him and tell him, you are the Messiah, you are the world leader, and these are the instructions. God will give him the superpower he needs, or the super inspiration, or the super wisdom. It says he will be 10 times wiser than Solomon, who knew everything. So he will have the wisdom. I don't know if he has magic powers that he'll make things float and all of that, but he will have superior wisdom to any other world leader to accomplish what he needs to accomplish, which is what will make him the world leader, and he'll do it step by step until, and he'll go unnoticed until one day, boom, world leader shows up. He will put up his kingdom in what today is the land of Israel, and he'll rule from there, and he'll rule for 1,000 years, and then I'm not sure what happens after that.
Robert, describe the perfect world leader.
My perfect world leader. Well, obviously somebody who is first and foremost loving and caring. He has to care for his constituents. He's got to care about me. He's got to care about humanity. If we're going to grant over this level of authority and submit to a king, or he has to have first and foremost love for humanity. He besides being loving, he has to have the power and the authority, like Paul is saying, to get things done. So, I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, what do we want? We want to be healthier, we want to be wealthier, we want these wars to end. The problems with humanity are not that you don't have to dig too far to get to them. Okay, we got a problem with death, we got a problem with war, we got a problem with money. I mean, we live in the richest country, in the richest state, in the richest city, and everybody around here is always worrying about money. So we're looking for a king that'll solve economic problems, a king that'll solve health care and medical problems. We'll solve them for a long time, which means that he can't be in power for 4 years or 8 years or even 100 years. I need this king to be eternal. Because if the guy dies, even if he lives 800 years and then he dies, then I got to put up with his son who might be a jerk. And all the progress that we've made, all this beautiful things that we've enjoyed, all the wealth that I've managed to accumulate, now I have to wait for his son to maybe take it all away from me, and I still can't go to bed without anxiety and without stress. So it's very important for this king for him to be eternal. The power and the authority that he has. He has to have power and authority to fix global problems. He's got to have authority over the demonic realm. He's got to have, we have spiritual beings that have been attacking mankind, and this being needs authority over the demonic realm to either cast these beings aside or kick them off the planet or deal with them in one way or another. He has to know how to rule mankind, which means economic laws, healthcare laws, marriage and family, the social laws of humanity. He has to have the wisdom to apply these and to integrate them into a society where people ultimately start following him, not by force, but because he's so good at what he's doing that you just can't help but fall in love with the guy, and you just can't help to give him allegiance because your life is just getting better and better and better. So he has to have the wisdom to run the planet. He has to have authority over the animal kingdom, for example. I don't like going to the zoo and petting a bear and getting mauled. To me, animals are built for enjoyment, and I can't enjoy half of them because half of them want to kill me. So to me, this being would need to resolve the conflict in the animal kingdom. The lion has to ease up on the gazelle and just be a vegetarian or something. But there's no need for all the bloodshed in the animal world. That to me is a perversion of God's original design. I'm looking for somebody who restores it the way it was. Same thing with weeds and plants and earthquakes. This planet, it's always on the realm of knocking itself off of orbit. I need somebody that could calm things down. And I don't want to be worrying at night if there's going to be an earthquake and the whole world's going to implode on itself. I need a guy who's got authority over the weather, a guy who can calm storms. The weather of this planet sucks. Half the planet's too cold, the other half's too hot. You want to explore Antarctica, you can't, it's too cold. You want to go to Texas, I went to Texas last month, and it was too hot. It was very hot. I don't like Texas. So, and I'm not talking about 1 degree of global warming. I'm talking like it was 30 degrees off. So, most of this planet's weather is pretty sad. So I'm looking for a guy who can ride the storm and fix the core essence of the planet. What is he not? He's not a socialist. He's not going to take money from the one guy who works and distribute it equally to the 15 guys who didn't work. That way we're all equally poor. That's not a world leader that I'm looking at. I'm looking at a world leader where everybody's wealthy, not the same degree of wealth, but everybody is wealthy. The poor guy on the planet, maybe he's got to buy a used jet. Can't afford a new one, but we can get by with one that's 2 months old. He's not a warmonger. I don't have to worry about going to war all the time. I don't have to worry about being spied on and microphones and CIA and NSA and everybody's always breathing down my neck like 1984 or a Brave New World type of atmosphere. That's not the world leader that I'm talking about. He's not multi-religious. He's uni-religious, as in he gets rid of all religions and then narrows it down to obedience to him. He's multicultural. He likes culture. But this idea of having multiple religions has caused nothing but pain and suffering. That you got to get rid of.
Okay, very good. Now, I think one of the coolest things is to actually hear the viewpoint from the person who holds it. What I mean by that is, as a Bible-believing Christian, I would often read, what do Mormons believe? What do Jews believe? And then I get to meet one like Paul, who I think's a fantastic guy, and to hear his beliefs from his viewpoint and why he believes them, it's often a little bit different than what I was told as a Bible-believing Christian of what Jews believe. So did anyone else have that kind of like, that was good to see, that was good to hear a modern Orthodox Jew with a very high IQ explain what they believe and why they believe it? Same with the Agnostic Professor as well. So, okay, so now I'm ready to hear how these guys would kind of question each other. And we're going to take the next 15 minutes. If you have questions about anything that you would like to have answered tonight, we'll try and get it through as many of those as we can. Please text it to 858-997-0757. But let's go ahead and get the timer back up. Can we do it for 15 minutes? And then we'll go ahead and I'll just turn the floor over to you and kind of let you, Nick, why don't you maybe start it off? What question would you like to, based on any of the three things we discussed tonight? Who is God? What is the Bible? Describe the perfect world leader. Anything that you've heard Robert or Paul say, what would you challenge them with possibly? Or what would you want more clarity on?
Well, I think that's a hard question. So I think our views are not this dissimilar, and that's what I want to stress as being an agnostic person. It doesn't mean that you don't believe in anything. It just means that you don't have to take what someone else tells you as a literal truth. And so you have to be open-minded. You have to be open-minded to the fact that there's the possibility that creation did not happen in the way that it was written in the Bible. That it's a theory, an hypothesis that hasn't been proven, and that's probably not going to be proven during our existence. Whether it's intelligent design, the Big Bang, continual inflation, all these different theories just go to show that there's a lot of uncertainty in the world. And that brings a lot of insecurity. And that insecurity causes people to reach for a comforting answer, something that they can conform to, and that's okay. If you choose a religion and you're comfortable with it and you don't need to know the absolute truth for you to have faith, and that helps you guiding your moral compass into what is right and what is wrong, then you've accomplished something that is good for humanity. As long as you don't take what you believe to be your faith or what you believe to be the truth as the only truth, and that you're open to the diversity of the interpretation that you have, they will all lead ultimately to the same right or wrong, because the human has this propensity to have feelings, and to have feelings, compassion for the other, and that's the right morality that should guide us into our lives, and not restricting ourselves to what we were told by a priest, by a pastor, by 5, 6 different Hindu gods, and so forth.
I mean, my opinions of anything they said or anything I would like to question.
And we can go in any order. I'll let you guys chat for 15 minutes. I think it'd be fun to watch.
Yeah, so my opinions on what they both said. So I happen to be a little more open-minded than most, right? I will say you will encounter some Jews that will not take questioning very good, as you will encounter some agnostics and some Christians that really will not bend their ideas, and that's unfortunately ignorant. And so I know both of them, and I know both of them will bend their ideas, and they will humble themselves if they are proven wrong, and that's a good quality. But going in further, when I was in college, I went and explored the different religions. I was curious, so I went to every flavor you can think of. I had 4 years, right? And I grew up in a very Jewish community in Mexico, which there was not a lot of outside people, welcome or not welcome. It just, the area was literally called Polanco, which in English means Polish. So if you were, most of them were Polish Jews. So I grew up in this area. So when I went to college in New York, there was many, many, many sorts of people, Hindus, Buddhists, Muslims, everybody. So I started exploring different people, groups, and as I went to different religions, I kept going back to mine. And obviously it was not the same religion that my parents taught me. I started understanding it differently and seeing the mistakes they had made. So I started understanding my own form of Judaism. But as I went and I saw the Muslim religion, it's a great religion. It's a religion of lots of peace. Actually, it's not an angry religion. It's a religion of peace, and the Muslims I met are very peaceful people. Then I started exploring different sects of Christianity. And I met my first evangelical friend in college. And I would not understand what he was because he liked Israel. It's like, you guys don't like Israel, you guys are Christian. But I started understanding how some Christians, and I understood this sect of Christianity, like Israel. Then there's some people that take it to the extreme, like love Israel, like this guy over here. I still don't understand, but that's another thing. So as I went into talking to this friend and everything, I was like, yeah, your religion is pretty cool, and I like it, but you have this Jesus guy, which I just can't agree with, and you have this lovingness and forgiveness, which I just don't think the same Bible that I read reads that. Just I read it, the same verse you're reading, but it just does not mean the same to me. And that's where we differed. And that's where we always drew the line, but we agree, probably myself and true Bible-believing Christians, in probably 90% of the Bible. Then there's 10% that I just disagree with. And for example, Nick, I agree probably in 80% of what he says. There's that 20% of God not being omnipresent and all-powerful that I disagree with. But pretty much the rest, I agree with him. So, yeah, that's kind of my opinion of this guy's talkings. And I can go more in depth, but that's the big picture of what I think about what they said.
Go to the experts. Just when in doubt, if you don't know how to do something, find someone who does. So if you want maple syrup, you go to Canada. Nick's from Canada. Okay? If you want good food, you go to Italians. If you want philosophy, you go to the Jew. Just the way it is. So why have I adopted that idea? Because I did, like these guys said, I tried different philosophies throughout my years, and they didn't work. The Jewish one worked, and as I applied it to my life, and I said, if everybody treated me this way, this would really be the planet that I wanted to live in. So it makes sense at a core level. I just did not accept it because I was brought up this way. I was brought up in a completely different faith than what I have now. So I put these ideas to the test before I internalize them, and now I'll die for these ideas. But I wasn't born that way. As a matter of fact, I challenged it and I questioned it, and it bothered me that a lot of the things that in this book said. And so after rebelling and trying and smashing my teeth up against the wall over and over, and it's like, gee, if I would have just done it the way this Jewish book would have told me to do it back then, life would have been a lot better for me. So that's how my faith grew, to the point that now I actually give it blind obedience. And as far as the definition of this gentleman that we're looking for that to rule the world, if you notice, the answers have a strong overlap. We're looking for a we're looking for a man who's got divine qualities. We're looking for a king who's got a servant heart. You understand? It's an opposite, and it's and or. We're looking for a God, man, man, God, king, servant, servant, king. And that desire is found in every human heart. As you travel the world, those desires are there in every human heart. Now the only question is, we're not agreeing on how to fulfill this emptiness that we have in our heart. According to this book, we are going to elect a poor representation of this world leader. We call him the anti-Messiah or the Antichrist, anti meaning against or anti meaning before. And if you're not careful in defining what loving is, you're actually going to vote for the wrong guy to take full control, because the desire to give one man full control of the planet is there in everybody's heart, and all the religions are pushing to do that. So it's going to become more and more important for you to learn how to identify who the right guy is and who the wrong guy is. Because we're talking about Constantine, or whether it's Hitler or Nimrod or Pharaoh or Charlemagne. The next guy that we're going to elect is going to be given a level of financial autonomy, a level of military autonomy. We have now literally the power to destroy all life left on earth. No emperor has ever enjoyed that kind of power. So the next guy that we are going to elect to give him religious power, military power, political power, the next guy is going to have so much of it that if we make a mistake, we are going to blow ourselves off this rock. So that is the culmination of this book, and that's how it ends. It says you guys are going to elect the wrong guy, and then the real guy is going to have to show up and fix it right before it all goes to pot. He's coming back at the last minute when humanity, or we come to our senses when we admit that we've been doing it wrong, and he calls and saves us and saves the day. Kind of like the film Lord of the Flies, when those kids are just about to go nuts, the adults come back and reestablish order. So that's my take.
Okay, great. So what questions do you have for each other about your individual viewpoints? Robert, what would you ask?
What would I ask?
What would you ask Nick, who? Go ahead.
What would I ask Nick? The world leader that he was describing was, in essence, he was describing Jesus Christ almost to a T. But you won't say it that way. Now, why is that? It's not because of the character that you've read in this book is appealing to you. But you won't say that he's the guy who should run the planet. Is it because people who have called themselves Christians over the last 2,000 years have done things that were so wicked that for you to say, given these people financial or military or religious authority, would be absolutely disastrous to the world? What I'm asking is, are you sure you're not, I think you like Jesus, you just don't like people who go around with his name and what they...
Jesus was a Jew to begin with. So let's start with that, all right? And then your belief that Jesus created all these miracles and he was the prophet is the fundamental distinction between you and him. So really the difference that you're describing is not the difference between my interpretation of events that happened in the past. Is that person the Messiah, and does he bring deliverance to humanity, and is he the answer to be the world leader? I perceive it, I don't take the Bible as factual. I take the Bible, first of all, when you look at God, it is okay for you not to know who God is. And you don't need to be part of a religion to decide who God is, right? If you want God to be the world leader, which is what you were describing, and you're still giving that power into a man. So the man is a man. The man is part of mankind. If you believe that he's sent by God because he's making all the right decisions, like Jesus Christ did in his life, then that means for you that this man is godlike. He was sent to the earth by God. I do not believe that Jesus was sent by God. I think Jesus had an ability to translate morality to a large crowd who believed in him, and they believed in what he said, and they they found comfort into him. I do not believe that Jesus Christ took bread and multiplied it by 1,000 times. I think what Jesus Christ did is he took one loaf of bread and he cut it down into little pieces and he shared it with everybody, for everybody to have an equal part. I don't understand that. One of the fundamental things that you have to do in life is love your neighbor and share with them and do the same thing to him that you would want him to do to you. And so that miracle is faith, right? The message is the same. The interpretation of the message is different. Jesus did not multiply the bread. Jesus shared it with everybody for everybody to feel like they are equals.
Okay, Paul, what would be your objection to having Jesus be? Where did he fail in your description of this Messiah or this perfect world leader?
50% of everything he did, he failed.
He
He didn't reunite the children of Israel back in the land. He didn't rebuild the third temple. He didn't spread universal knowledge of the Word of God instantly. Kinky. Those are the three. Those three should be enough to put a hold. And yes, some Christians believe he is the temple. No, it describes the physical temple, and I haven't seen it. And there is also the part where he has to spread universal knowledge. He has, in some way, in the last 2,000 years, spread universal knowledge. And yes, so he accomplished, in a way, that. But as I read it, it says that this will be kind of an instant thing, such as Mount Zion, when the revelation of the commandments and everybody knew them. So everybody will know who God is, how I see that is. But I don't think anybody found out who God was 2,000 years ago. Nobody saw him. 3 or 4 Jewish guys said they saw him resurrect, but I don't know. And then reunite all the Jews back into the land. He did quite the opposite. Just 30 years, 40 years was it? After he died, all the Jews got kicked out of the land. So it was exactly the contrary opposite of what it was supposed to happen.
The flaw in what you're saying is that you're putting the Jews at the center of the universe.
Yes.
And your beliefs are based on what you want to happen for your people versus I want the same thing for all of you. And I don't say that it's not only for the Jews. It's for all humanity. There's no there's no temple for one God. There's only one God for all of us if you believe in God. If you truly believe in God, there should be only one God for all of us.
Yeah. But he's not the God of the Jews. He's the God of the world, and the Jews are his chosen people, which is very different. And if you don't believe it, just check any list in the world. I studied economics and statistics, right? So that's actually how I went back into Judaism, because there is no way on earth that the Jews are not God's chosen people and still got all the rewards they got. They screw up and God keeps giving them candy. It's just crazy to believe this son keeps kicking his dad, keeps failing him. A lot of them are terrible people. And somehow, some way, they keep accomplishing great things. Karl Marx probably brought a lot of horrible things to the world, Jewish guy. But yeah, the book he wrote was an amazing, very brilliant thing. Just, it didn't work, right? So different things that are bad people and good people. You know, all of you have a phone in your pocket. That was a Jewish guy. All you have Facebook. That was a Jewish guy. Google. That was a Jewish guy. All of you have money in your pocket. That was a Jewish guy. So I don't believe that the world revolves around Jews, but I do believe God is here for everyone. And then the Jews are his chosen people that are supposed to deliver the message of God to the people. And we have failed at that. And that is why Messiah is not.
10%.
And along the way collected interest. But that's why Messiah has not come, because we have failed.
It's the same as Monopoly, right? You go around, every time you pass, you pay 200.
And that's why Messiah hasn't come, just because we haven't done our part of the job. And the Christians haven't done their part of the job, and there's still a lot of people in the world that are agnostic, and they're the ones who are farther away from doing their job. So that's that. I think that answered your question.
How would you challenge either of these guys to consider your viewpoint?
Well, the challenge to agnostic is if you don't solidify the thinking into one creator and getting to know who this creator was and the way he designed the planet to run, it's never going to run right. A car has to have a central operating system. An airplane has to have a central operating system. A nation, a family, anything has to have a central operating system. You stick 2 programs in a computer, the thing's going to crash. This planet has been built by one being, and until we align ourselves with his way of doing things, things just aren't going to work. So we cannot have we can't have more than one operating system. At the end of the day, it just won't work. The Jewish perspective of, he held up the 39 books of the Old Testament, and I'm holding up 66. This is the 27 books of the New Testament. They wrote them, and guess what? When they wrote Isaiah, they didn't believe what Isaiah said until, 50, 100 years later. When Jeremiah wrote, they didn't accept Jeremiah either. So to me, they're stiff-necked. They eventually get it. They just takes them a while. So I'm actually waiting for the day that they'll accept these Jewish scriptures the same way that they accepted Jeremiah and Isaiah. Once that happens, I think that this train of unification could actually start to happen. Because right now you have 7 billion people on the planet, and everybody's going in a different direction. It's like a box full of cats, and you can't herd them all together. So there needs to be a unification of thought. Now, what Nick is afraid of is you start giving that kind of authority and power to one guy, and now all of a sudden I'm going to have an evil dictator with absolute power, and that just scares us to all hell. Because every time that happens, bad things happen. That's why once you figure out that the world needs a central authority, then the next conclusion you have to make is that central authority has to be extremely loving and extremely caring about his creation. And the only guy who can sit in that chair is God himself in human form. We have 2 major disagreements with the Jews. One is what the Messiah is. For example, they don't claim that the Messiah's divinity. Here they're expecting a global world leader like Moses or David, who's just a man with no divinity. He's not God in the form of the flesh.
Second only to God.
Right. And my objection to that is if you give me that, if the guy is not eternal, then this kingdom can't last forever. So I'm still left with a problem. It's an unanswered equation, which is why the only book that finally answers the question of from start to finish is not this one. This one actually ends with a big question mark. Malachi ends with a non-solved problem. The only book on the planet that ends with a solution to the problem is the 66 books. And that's why I decided, okay, maybe it's one and the same, and then I merged these in my mind and started treating them as the Hebrew scriptures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's my disagreement. So if you already know there's a problem, aren't you going to try to come up with a solution? So they waited, they're like I think Malachi 2, the New Testament is 300 years, give or take. So 300 years, man, what are we going to do? So, man, this guy's not showing up. Maybe we should just write it that he showed up. And maybe that's what happened. I'm not quite sure. But maybe they got desperate from waiting 300 years. It's a very long time. But they didn't know that it might take 2,500 years. Who knows?
All right. Well, we're ending. Anything else you'd want to add? Okay. Well, we're going to end that section of the conversation, and now we're going to take some questions. If you can put the number up one last time. We have quite a few, so I'm going to work my way through what we've been given, And let's see here. One of the questions that someone in the audience asked, and we actually have people listening as far away as Japan tonight. So this is getting some views, which is great, and that's what we want. So one of the questions that we were asked, or that I just received, is who is Jesus? And we'll let the agnostic go first.
I'm starting to question why the agnostic always has to go first.
Okay. Because you have all the facts.
Just in the same way that you guys should always question what you're reading in the Bible. Jesus Christ was a human that that happened to have a lot of what Robert describes as godlike manners in terms of love and compassion for humanity, and it put him in an elevated place in the heart of a lot of people. But at the end of the day, Jesus was a human that was able to communicate very eloquently a message of love and of distinction between what is right and wrong, and that is why he holds an important place in history for us.
Who is Jesus? Jesus was a Jewish rabbi, teacher. Rabbi means teacher. And I think that's what it says in the New Testament, that he was a teacher. There's plenty of Christians, correct me if I'm wrong. But he was a teacher of people. And he started getting a large congregation, a big group of people. And if he would have not revealed himself and said that he was divinic, I truly believe that he would have been greater prophet than Moses. But at some period in his life, he decided he was God, and that's why the Jews don't believe in him, as he did not have the qualities we were expecting. But he was a great prophet, great teacher, great rabbi, and his word today changed the world in a good, positive way. And the United States, which is still today the most moral nation in the world, believes in the teachings of Jesus and its founding fathers. So I think that we have that to owe him. And a lot of it is the Old Testament and his inspiration and everything he did. And a lot of the stuff he did is quotes from the Old Testament. So I think Jesus, that's why I say he was a rabbi. He was very educated in the Old Testament. And he was I wasn't there when he was around. But if he convinced that many people, he must have been a true leader and inspired people to follow his teachings.
How would you answer, Robert?
Who's Jesus Christ?
Who is Jesus?
Well, I think I've characterized the perfect world leader as Jesus Christ, a man who's divine, a servant who's a king, or a king who's a servant. He's literally the creator of the universe coming down in an intimate way, so that I could touch him, I could hear him, I could see him, and without getting annihilated. Because if you stand in God's full glory, it's like standing next to the sun. You tend to get evaporated in 2 seconds, so that's not good. So what I need as a finite being, in order to interact with an infinite being, I need a go-between, I need a mediator, I need a broker. Standing in God's presence just scares me. In its raw form, we cannot interact. And I can't go up to his level, so in order to have intimacy, there's only one way, is he's got to come down to my level. And I think Jesus Christ is the picture of the creator of the universe coming down and interacting at our level. Paul's objection that he didn't get the job done, that is absolutely true. He didn't get the job done. The only thing he did is he left a down payment, he left a wedding ring, and he got engaged. And that's all he did. He was inviting us into a future kingdom. We told him we don't need it, go home. So he left his wedding ring and the business card and says, when you guys figure out that I'm your guy, you call me and I'll come running.
Is that why you left your wedding ring in the car and I'm wearing mine?
The Bible says to not wear a wedding ring.
Interesting. Okay. Well,
Not
so-
to express possession on anything. You don't possess anybody.
Next question we have. What is faith? And we'll start with Robert on this one because Nick didn't want to go.
What is faith?
What is faith?
Faith is believing something when you don't have 100% absolute evidence. And in admitting to Nick, yes, there's a lot of times that this book has proven itself true, absolutely, but there's still a lot of things in there that require faith. And that is actually the entire purpose of this exam. When God is asking you to interact with him, you cannot always understand when he gives you an instruction. So sometimes he asks you to take a knife and stab your firstborn son. Doesn't seem to have a whole lot of logic to it. Sometimes he asks you to not eat or to circumcise your kid on the 8th day. He asks you to do things that sometimes we do not understand. Once we identify that this is a loving being who cares for me, then I will extend him a level of trust, and I'll just go ahead and do what he says with blind faith. However, that blind faith was predicated on 6,000 years of disobedience. So it's not that I have no reason to believe him. I know what it's like disobeying this being for 6,000 years. So now when I'm giving him blind faith, I feel like I have all the reason to do so, and now our relationship could actually start, which is actually what I want for my kids. After I've been proving myself to them for year and year and year and year, if the kid is 12 years old and he's like, Daddy, where are we gonna eat today? It's like, you're 12 years old. How many days did you go hungry as you were, a child of mine? So why are you doubting me? Don't worry, I'll feed you today. Once the kid starts trusting the dad, then the relationship actually starts. And that's where we got to get to.
Okay, good. Anyone else want to go with that question? What is faith?
What is faith? So I think faith is something above anything. So let's say that moment when you are in the bungee jumping and you have the rope and that guy tells you nothing's going to happen, that's not faith. That's trust, which is 100 steps below. It's if that guy told you jump and you had no rope. And that's faith.
So faith is explaining something that is physically impossible.
True.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, the next question we got from our listeners is, what happens when we die?
You have to go to the believers first.
What happens when we die?
What happens when we die?
You die. Then when Messiah comes, you get resurrected, if you're lucky.
Okay, so not everyone gets resurrected.
I'm not sure. I think some people get resurrected first, and I'm not sure. I don't think everybody gets resurrected, no. I think the bad people stay dead.
I was hoping you would say that, because a lot of people that are faith-based beliefs have this perplexity of what happens to the believers and what happens to the non-believers. The same thing will happen, right? We all live our life. Our life is not a continuum. Our life in our body eventually goes away, evaporates. And for some people, there will be a judgment day where it will be decided whether you go to heaven or heaven or hell. And I think if you die as a person and you feel like you've accomplished the same thing that your neighbor did that bears a different religion, then you will end up in the same place, whether you're a believer or not, into the indoctrination of a Bible or of an interpretation of what you've been taught. You have to remember that religions are different because you have different interpretations of fundamental books that brings different beliefs. And for you to decide whether God exists or not, whether you believe in God or not, is not going to make a difference as to how you die.
And one of the things that I think people focus way too much is on what happens when they die. I think it's irrelevant, and it's actually the least important thing you should worry about in your life. Mm-hmm. What you should worry about, if you put all the time and all the world, and everybody has always thought what happens when you die, if you just live life every day, like if you were going to die that day, because if today's my judgment day, then we have no problems, and we'll all be sipping those pina coladas. So,
high five.
What happens after you die? Well, I think God created, part of his essence was eternality, part of his essence was life. He didn't make human beings to die. It's weird. It's not the original design. The fact that we have to die, it's an error in the code. So why did we get kicked out of the garden and we lost access to a tree that would let us live forever? Well, because once you have a rebellion within the kingdom, you either cement people in that rebellion in eternal life, and that's horrible. Or, as a just, loving father, you extend a certain amount of life, and then the lease ends. So what makes sense to me is that if you are in congruency with the king, if you are a loving human being and you care about the king and others, he can allow you to enter his kingdom and grant you that eternal life, which is a gift. If you are in disagreement with that king, if you are going to insist on raping and pillaging and stealing and causing harm to your fellow neighbors, the king cannot put you into the kingdom because he has an obligation to preserve justice for everyone else. So at that point, I think he ceases to grant you an extension on your lease, and he terminates your lease. And I believe that you cease to exist after due punishment, after due judgment, but eventually I think the only thing that you can do with a rebellious being is put him out of his misery.
That kind of leads into one of the questions that came in with 30,000 different denominations in Christianity. Robert, which one would you recommend? That was the way the question was asked. I'm just reading what I was given. Which one would you, I guess, follow or point people to?
30,000 differentiations.
In Christianity.
I think you could boil it down to two. There's actually two religions on the planet. I don't care if you call it Judaism, Christianity, Muslim. There's the religion where you love God and you love others, and there's the religion where you don't. And they all fall into that category. And that is the distinction that God is looking for. He couldn't care less about anything else. What he cares about is how you care about his feelings. Do you care about his feelings and his pain and his pleasure? And do you care about the feelings of the people around you? If you have that, everything else he can teach you.
Okay. This one was for Paul. Who do you understand Isaiah 53 to be speaking of?
The people of Israel. I get asked this every day.
So not an individual.
No.
Okay.
And it's interchangeably, and it's an ignorance in translation. Learn Hebrew, then read it, and then tell me what you think.
So where would the error be in specifically?
Usually words translate, and I'm not the right person, as my Hebrew is not the best. But from what I read and what other people that read better Hebrew than me, and also people who study the actual words, tell me that it's interchangeably that servant, suffering, the word servant, servants, there is no plurals or singulars in that period of Hebrew scripture.
So Robert's Bible doesn't have it correct.
No, Robert's Bible, this one does, but it was written by a Messianic Jew, so I don't trust it 100%.
Would you want to respond?
It has it in a singular format, which is modern Hebrew. But if you read the Jerusalem Codex, there is a small. So Hebrew letters are compiled of different dots and points. If you ever seen Hebrew letters, some of them end with a dot, with a period, point, etc., or like a, I don't know how you call it in English, but like a little hyphen, apostrophe. And in some older Tanakhs and older Isaiah, it does not have all the apostrophes and dots. That's one of the things that more of the Jewish scholars, I don't have any proof of any Christian sources that disagree, but I have Jewish sources. And a good one is Aish, if you guys are curious, A-I-S-H, and it's in English, and it's a group of rabbis who discuss all sorts of these questions. And
I want to get a question here for the agnostic. So this person wrote, who created right and wrong, good and evil, and morality? How can you have morality without a higher authority? Morality is left to subjectivity. Who dictates morality?
If it takes a superior person to tell you what is right and wrong, inherently you're wrong. Because you shouldn't, we're built with intelligence as a human being that we need to go and acquire that ability to differentiate between what is wrong and what is right. And if it takes someone to tell you it is, which one is right, then that is your prerogative, and you haven't matured to be the person that is going to go to heaven, if that's what you believe. If you believe to choose that you don't need to have the answer to everything, and you decide to be agnostic, it doesn't mean that you can differentiate between what is right and what is wrong.
Oh, if I may add
Yeah.
to that, and also to my previous question really quick, I just remembered also on Isaiah 53 that God sometimes speaks, or the prophet sometimes interprets the word of God when they write it metaphorically. There's in many times that the people of Israel is described as a bride, the bride of God. There's sometimes that they're described as servant, so it could also be metaphorically. That is just my opinion. I don't have any sources for that, but I just remember that. And to his question of morality, is what I disagree with him is I don't agree that if you grab a baby and you never teach him anything, you just leave him in the jungle, he will have morality. He won't. He will kill another human. He'll eat it. He won't have morality, I think. He will not know right and wrong if you just put him.
So you have to
In the
believe that the
nakedness.
human being is born tabula rasa without any instinct for what is right and wrong.
Not 100%, yeah, but they have an
So
animal instinct, like a cat knows it's not smart to jump off this cliff, but that's about it, in a higher level.
Experience will tell you eventually what is right and wrong. You know, you start a fire, you put your hand on the fire and it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
You have pain.
Mm-hmm.
You know that if you have pain, the person next to you has pain.
But you have no idea why you can not eat a human
If your
and you can eat a
intention
cow.
is to cause pain, then your intention is to cause pain. But
Yeah.
you still know what is right and what is wrong. The ability for you to feel empathy and to make the right decision to your neighbor takes more than just knowing what is right and what is wrong. And that's why there's people fighting this war.
True.
Okay. This question comes in for Paul. Why do so many Jews support a political party whose policies undermine and are against Israel?
I'm not one of those, so I'm probably not the best fit to answer that question, but I do have family members that are like that, so I'll tell you what I think. I am actually very whoever is pro-Israel, I will be. But there is many people who are not pro-Israel, and it's because they are usually the children of immigrant Holocaust survivors that came to America. And from what I hear, for example, from my grandparents, they see themselves as the Mexicans of their generation. And they're like, nobody liked us, nobody wanted us, but we stayed here and we did good. And if nobody gives these new people a chance, like they did to us, we're never going to see their full potential. That's one of the reasons they support more immigrant pro. Then against Israel, some non-religious Jews believe that Israel is not doing the work of religion, and we are not supposed to have an Israeli land right now, as we lost it, and we shouldn't get it back till Messiah comes. And there was already a people group there, and we pushed them to the side, and that's their opinion on these guys. Yes, it was our house first, but then you show up and somebody else is living in your house, but you're stronger and more powerful, so you get them out. And again, they see themselves as Holocaust people. If that's why this particular group, if you study who are corely liberal Jews, are mostly the children of Holocaust survivors that when they came to America, they lost their Jewishness. They lost their religion, but they have that moral, and they check the box and say they're Jewish, but they don't practice. There's ethnical Jews and there's religious Jews. So I think that's why, because they see like, okay, once upon a time there was a German guy who was really strong and just slapped us in the face because we had nothing. But then we build up our resources and we went and slapped somebody else in the face. And that's not what we should have done. I see that's how they view it. But just to make clear, we don't slap Palestinians in the face. I actually think Israelis treat them quite well. Israeli Arabs have the highest percentage of education in the developed Middle East. They also have the highest income per Arabs in the non-Gulf states without oil help. So if you were to just work hard without your country having a lot of oil, they have the highest level. So I think we treat them very well. And we do create a separation between the both. And it's not because of our choice, it's more of their choice that they attacked us. So we create a separation as a defense, but we have tried to do a deal with them many times. We always bring up the idea of a deal, and they are the ones who shut it down.
Thank you. This question might be best for Robert initially here, but I would also love to hear what Nick thinks about it. For Christians who pray to Jesus and hope he will intercede with God, does this make sense if Jesus and God are one and the same? Actually, I'd love to hear all three of you on that one. I can repeat it if you want me to.
Yeah, I don't really make a distinction between praying to Jesus and praying to God. If our analysis is correct, that Jesus is God in human form, if you've seen him, you've seen the Father. If he answers you, the Father has answered you. I look at him as a go-between, like I said, of how an unlimited being can interact with a limited being. So he's reducing his resolution down to this picture that I can now see with my eyeballs. So I don't really make a distinction between the two. I want to touch on the Isaiah 53. The Jewish opinion on Isaiah 53 prior to 2,000 years ago was that Isaiah 53 was talking about a suffering servant and that it was talking about the Messiah. After Yeshua comes to the planet, we started hitting the Jews on the head with Isaiah 53 so many times that it started getting on their nerves, and they had to come up with a counter-Reformation argument. So if you look at the rabbis post Jesus, and I think even the idea of Israel being the servant of Isaiah 53, it's pretty new. I think it's 1,000 or 400 years old. It's not something that they've always carried. That was as a reaction to New Testament writings. And pay attention to that if you study commentary in the Jewish world. They shift gears after the year 0 to deal with this Yeshua character.
What he's referring to is there is the Rambam, which was about 100 years before the Talmud. And in the Rambam is the first time where it says that Isaiah 53 is a Messiah. Then in the Talmud, a guy named Rashi started saying it wasn't. And Rabbi Nachman, which was the most respected at the time, he's the one who actually wrote and explained why it wasn't. And that was about 1,800 years ago. So he has a point, but still the translation doesn't add up.
Cool. This one would be for Nick. You said you don't believe, you said you don't have to worship God, believe in God in order to have faith in a higher power. What is this higher power you speak of?
I don't think I said that there's a higher power that is God. I said that God is unknown, And I am not seeking for an answer on something that is unknown by validating an hypothesis that hasn't been proven right or wrong. So I think it is okay and acceptable for certain things to be unknown. And God, as it refers to creation, is an unknown, and that is okay.
Okay. One of the viewers wrote, Nick said the perfect world leader has to be able to accept all religions and determine right from wrong. How will you ever have peace if there are 100 different religions?
I said that indoctrination cannot be part of leading the world, meaning that it cannot be one religion. If people choose to have different religions, that is their personal choice, and that is how they decide to interpret what's written in the Bible. That is not me. What the world leader will be is someone that accepts everybody, whether they are right or wrong on what their beliefs are.
So another question came in. Do you believe Jesus existed?
Did you believe that Jesus existed?
Yeah.
Yes, Jesus existed.
Okay. One of the viewers asks, wouldn't Jesus be the only perfect world leader?
No, he wasn't strong.
He was not able to unify the world. He doesn't mean that he wasn't a good world leader, but he wasn't good enough.
How would you respond to that?
He showed that he had all of the authority and all the power to do so, and he did not take the kingdom by force. He gave mankind another 2,000 years to come freely into this kingdom before he comes by force. He wants you to love him because of his attributes, not because of his power and his authority. I always make an analysis of the movie with the prince coming, and then he dethrones himself. Coming to America is a perfect Eddie Murphy with Coming to America. He's looking for a wife that really loves him, so he leaves his money, gets a job at McDonald's. He strips himself down of his glory because he's looking for an intimate relationship with somebody who loves him for who he is, not because of the money, not because of the power. Then, of course, after you say yes to that invitation, then he can come back and finish the job. So his objection towards Jesus not getting the job done is absolutely true. He did not get the job done. The kingdom did not start. We've had more pain and suffering and wars and disease and children with cancer in the last 2,000 years. World War II was the worst thing that ever happened to the planet. So if Jesus' kingdom started 2,000 years ago, it's like if the millennium started 2,000 years ago, then the millennium really sucks. So we are in a temporary invitation. God is extending an invitation to a kingdom. He needs staff to run it, and he's asking people to join him when he comes back with force. He's looking for people who love him because of his sacrificial attributes. Once you show yourself that you are willing to be a loving human being, you qualify and you can now enter into the kingdom, and he can start granting you authority and force and power and strength. We don't have a problem with him having it. The problem is if you want to run a planet, you need agents, you need people to work for you. And 2,000 years ago, he had a tough time finding 11 Jews that would run his operating system. So he's given mankind an extra 2,000 years of grace and mercy to accept this invitation.
This is for Paul. Do Jewish people believe they are in need of salvation from sin? If yes, how do they obtain it?
Yes, we believe that we are in need for salvation of sin. We need to work on it every day of our lives, and we start over the next morning. That is what Jewish belief says. That is what the rabbis teach. We need to do it every day. It's not once a week, it's not donate a check once a month, or it's not repent the 5 minutes before you die and go and say, I believe in Jesus and you're saved. No, it's every single day. And I have heard a rabbi say as hard as the next, at 12 o'clock at night, you're a selfish prick again. So every day you start over.
Would you add anything to that?
What was the question again?
Do you believe, I would say, do you believe people are in need of salvation?
I don't know about people, I know about me. And yeah, I've done things in my life that are beyond repair. I cannot restore them. I can't make the people that I've hurt whole again. I've literally caused so much damage to other human beings that it is no longer within my power to repair it. So no matter how good I live from now on, I still have to fix these humongous debts that I left behind. So now the only problem is, if we have a just God, is who's going to pay for all this pain that I've caused. So yeah, I need a savior. I need somebody to pay for my mistakes. The only way justice can be served is that somebody who has the capacity to pay for it has to pay for it, because I no longer have the capacity to pay for it. I've caused way too much pain and way too much suffering on way too many human beings that even, like I said, even if I wanted to, I just cannot put the toothpaste back in the tube. So yeah.
Jesus is your guarantor on your loan.
Exactly. And I need a guarantor because I know that I cannot make that payment. So I'm looking for one. And if it's not Jesus, there better be somebody else. Otherwise, there will be no equation that makes this just.
Nick,
for me.
Nick, do you see mankind in need of a savior?
You need a compass to be able to decide what is right and what is wrong, and some people don't have that ability, so you need to hold your neighbor's hand and help him.
Okay, so you're saying you can help your neighbor. What about humanity as a whole? Is it broken?
Humanity is a whole. So it has to be everybody together agreeing that we're going to do wrong. We're not going to do wrong from here on. We're going to do right. And there's always a weakness in the link, and that's how it breaks down. And if there's someone who can come and save it all, then yes, I would believe in God. And it's not where we are.
Okay, so is humanity its own savior?
I don't have that answer. I don't need to have the answer. It's
Okay.
unknown.
Okay. I think this question is probably for Robert. And this viewer wrote, why did Christianity prevail? Why did a religion based on a crucified criminal conquer the world in spite of persecution?
Why did Christianity prevail? Christianity has not prevailed. What they're defining as Christianity is the 2 billion people that are calling themselves Christian. That has absolutely nothing to do with this book, and it's got absolutely nothing to do with the New Testament. If the 2 billion people that are calling them Christians are representative of Christianity, then these books combined are the most anti-Christian books on the planet. Let's call the Gentiles that have accepted this message, or at least have purportedly accepted it. What we've done to this message is exactly what Israel did to the message. We heard it, we changed it, and we kept on doing our own thing. So there is no conquering of humanity on a large scale. Loving your neighbor, loving God is something that the minority is doing today. And it's not 2 billion people. If 1/3 of the planet was Holy Spirit-filled people, this planet would look nothing like it looks today. So to say that Christianity has won, like I said, you are introducing the word Christianity to another religion, and whether it's Christianity or whether it's Islam or whether it's Rabbinic Judaism, to me they're all the same. They all lead to me doing what I want when I want and getting some rabbi or some priest or some pastor to make me feel good about my sins. But when you really get down to business and you want to love God and love your neighbor, that's something that's being done by a small minority of people on this planet. And those small minority is the people that God is going to use to establish the kingdom in the future. But it is a future event. It is not present.
Paul, since there is no temple in Jerusalem, no longer a Levitical priesthood, and no animal sacrifice, what are you doing now as a Jew for forgiveness of sins?
We do Yom Kippur, which is repentance, and we also ask for forgiveness every day. We have different prayers, Modianim, the Shema, different prayers that ask for forgiveness. And actually, I don't think anybody asks for forgiveness more than the Jews. If you really spend one day with an Orthodox Jew, I don't know what the number is, but it's probably not ridiculous. At least 150 times a day, they ask for forgiveness on their prayers. So, but the core, the biggest day is Yom Kippur, and we also, I personally believe, I happen to be from a smaller core group of Jews that actually believe that you have to go to Israel also and ask for forgiveness there in the land, closer to other people. And it's not because God is more powerful over Israel. I don't believe in that, but I believe that God is more powerful where more people with the same message are together.
Thank you. Nick, how would you explain Bible prophecy? Would you consider becoming a believer if you saw prophecy come to fruition?
I think this is a question from someone that's trying to convince themselves that what's written in there or what their interpretation of it really happened. And so yeah, obviously if you observe an event and you have scientific proof that something happened, it happened. The allegories and metaphors in the Bible are not meant for you to give you factual events. It's not meant for you to believe in something that happened or didn't happen. It's meant to guide you in your life with a morality that gives you the ability to make a distinction between what is right and what is wrong.
So I'd be curious to know from Robert and Paul, do you believe biblical prophecy is coming to fruition today?
Yeah.
In what way?
My favorite one that you can physically see and science believers can prove is where it says the desert will turn into green land. Not sure where it is. I believe it's in Isaiah. Pastor, is it in Isaiah?
You can't put me on the spot like that. But no, we'll get it.
I think it's in Isaiah. But it says that the desert will turn into green land. And if you fly over Israel, it's referring to the desert of Israel. It's the only desert that I've seen turn into green land in 70 years.
How would you answer, Robert? Do you feel like biblical prophecies, do you feel like we're seeing desert turn into green land? Are there other prophecies that you feel might be being fulfilled right now from the Bible?
Yeah, the reestablishment of the nation of Israel was probably the loudest fulfillment of prophecy. A nation, never in history has a nation gotten wiped out, and 2,000 years later it comes back. And God is literally rebuilding it piece by piece. He's putting the bones back. He's putting the tribes back. When we go to Israel, we ask the Jews, why do you like living in this particular area? And they're like, I don't know, I just feel at home here. And you go up north and you ask the Jew, and he says this exact same thing. So God is putting the bones back. Then he's going to put the flesh back on the nation. The last thing they're going to get is the spirit, when he breathes the spirit of life into them. So prophecy, the prophecy calendars are well underway. We're coming to the end of the time of the Gentiles. The time of the Gentiles is being fulfilled. The video camera used to be on Israel. After 70 AD, there was nothing to video camera because Israel wasn't there anymore. So it shifted to a time of the Gentiles. But now we are coming to the end of that time, and the video camera is moving away from us, and it's shifted back towards the Jews and Israel in anticipation of the king coming back and taking the throne. Like I said, the only thing left before you get the proper king, whether you call him the Christ or whether you call him the Messiah, those are the same words, by the way, is the Hebrew Scriptures talks about one bad event, one bad guy. We need to go through 666 before we get to 777. But we are at the end of this clock. And you can see the world getting ready to do that right now. Everybody is desperately wanting to give concentrations of power to one human being to resolve all global conflicts.
So Nick, do you feel like are they reading into that, or do you feel like, I mean, you were shaking your head, yes.
I'll add something for Robert quick. And also for those that, or for example, Nick or whoever else that says only prophecies happen to the Jews. I think there's prophecies that happen to the Gentiles, that they'll spread knowledge, and here they are. And also prophecy, one thing that's one of my favorite that you can also prove scientifically is with DNA testing, Isaac and Ishmael. They got different prophecies, and today you can see them. Ishmael got the fatness of the earth. What does that mean? fatness of the earth, the richest soil you can possibly have. And our half brothers in Saudi Arabia, which is where it geographically says Ishmael went to, have more oil than anybody else. Then Isaac got the prophecies of knowledge and wisdom and other stuff, so, and being the chosen one. So yes, the prophecies happen, and that's another one that you can prove scientifically.
So what do you think about that, Nick?
Well, I think a lot of people have a tendency to use events that happen as a true answer to something that they believe because that's good enough for them. The fact that the world, the planet Earth is made of tectonic plates that move, that create a movement of the dirt that change climates over time, increases the probability that a desert would turn into green acreage at some point in time. And we've experienced that multiple times throughout prehistoric history.
Coincidence that it happened in this tiny little place.
Yeah. So there's a lot of coincidences that happen. There's reinterpreting what you've thought to be true based on events that happen because it gives you the comfort of an answer that you've been seeking for a long time, but it does not explain or it does not truly make a prophecy occur.
I think we have a pretty biblically literate audience. I was impressed. So one of our viewers sent in the reference is Isaiah 35 verses 1 and 2. The wilderness, and this is in the King James, the wilderness and the solitary place shall be glad for them, and the desert shall rejoice and blossom as the rose. It shall blossom abundantly and rejoice even with joy and singing. The glory of Lebanon shall be given unto it, the excellency of Carmel and Sharon. They shall see the glory of the Lord and the excellency of our God. So is that the verse you were? Okay.
I think so.
And
yeah.
you see that?
Yeah,
being
I think
fulfilled.
it's the one because Carmel. That's where they told it to me the first time because you're in Mount Carmel in Israel, and it's like you can see Syria from Mount Carmel, and Syria is just flat desert, and then Mount Carmel is super green. So I think that's the one.
Okay, and did you say you were a stats guy earlier?
Yeah.
Okay, so what would be the statistics? Like, what would be
Of it happening there?
of it, yeah.
I don't know. Israel is 0.02% of the landmass of the world. I know that. So.
Robert, would you want to add anything?
They got a down payment on the fulfillment of that prophecy.
We still have some desert.
The
Not
gr-
all of it
right.
turned green.
The grass is just starting to sprout. The nation is just starting to turn green.
Yeah.
They have not seen
climate change is happening.
No, it's got nothing to do with climate change. They have not seen the glory of the Lord.
Yeah.
That is post Messiah. But what they are getting is they're getting a down payment on all these prophecies. God is preparing them, saying, "Hey, this could happen,"
Yeah.
and He's working on their heart. And remember, Israel is a microcosm of the whole world.
Yeah.
So when Israel gets it right, the whole world gets it right. When Israel gets it wrong, the whole world gets it wrong.
Golda Meir, which was the first female prime minister and the first female prime minister of Israel, said, somebody was asking her about the green land, etc., of turning on Isaiah 35. And she says, well, who we really have to blame is Moses. He brought us to the Middle East, to the only place in the Middle East that has no oil.
This question is kind of related to the prophecy question. As an Orthodox Jew, you must believe in the coming of a Messiah to the nation of Israel. How do you recognize and identify him as the Messiah when he comes?
That's a good question. I get it asked all the time, and I don't really have an answer. They just say, you'll know, because he'll have the qualities that you are waiting for. And he will do the things. And probably I won't believe at him at the beginning. That's just me. If he were to show up tomorrow, I would say you're full of it. So, until he does what he's supposed to do. And if he does everything he's supposed to do that I read, and because are very, very incredible things he has to accomplish, I will bow down and kiss his feet if he does that.
Robert, how would, as a Bible believer, how would you know when the Messiah returns?
How would I differentiate a loving, powerful world leader from a bad one? You look at all the past people who have gotten close to this power. They've amassed power, they've amassed authority. What they never amassed was a loving or a sacrificial heart. The distinguishing factor between a good Messiah and an anti-Messiah is one person is actually genuinely caring about humanity, and the other one just wants humanity to worship himself, to worship him and give him honor. So one wants to actually enslave us, the other one wants to free us. However, the counterfeit is going to be so close. The Bible says that this being, this devil, this Satan, has been working for 6,000 years to counterfeit this loving Messiah. And he's getting so good at it that it says that it's going to be extremely difficult if God did not give you special information, special revelation. Under your own human strength, you won't be able to tell them apart. So the problem with writing prophecies is that the bad side can read it too. So every time God describes what his Messiah is going to look like, Satan's reading that every day, and he's tailoring and he's creating his Messiah to fulfill that role perfectly. So he's going to fake a resurrection. He's going to fake a unification of religion. He's going to do all the things that the Jews are waiting for, that the Christians are waiting for, and even that the Muslims are waiting for. So this counterfeit king, this counterfeit Messiah that's coming, it's very, very, very close to the real thing.
We have a little bit more time, I think. I'll probably wrap it up around 8:30, but the reason why I want to keep going a little bit is because you guys are bringing in a lot of questions right now that are pretty good. So we good? Another 15 minutes? Yeah?
Sure.
Cool. Okay, Nick, some
Some
cultures...
food over here.
Yeah. Some cultures love their neighbor, other cultures eat their neighbor, cannibalism. Doesn't the higher moral culture allowed to take over?
I don't think I understand the question.
I think what they're saying is some cultures love their neighbor, others eat. If there's one that's of a higher moral level, would they be allowed to be the dominating culture and to change the other culture?
Every man is made equal. It's very clear that regardless of what your religion is, if you believe in one true God, then you have to believe that every man is made equal. So
Well, okay, so let me...
What are you asking is
think-
it okay for Norway to go conquer Papua New Guinea where they eat people? So
There
Norway
you
teaches
go.
them their good school system by the force and they all
Yes.
become Norwegian?
Is there a point where a culture can become so evil that you would authorize a better culture to go in there and use physical force and violence to eradicate that culture and start again? That's the question. Am I correct?
Yeah, does the higher moral culture
Have the moral
have the
prerogative
right
to
to rule
use,
other cultures?
By force.
Or maybe even at all? I guess let's maybe back up. Is it wrong for one person to eat another?
And at what point would you say, now I actually have the moral authority to go into that country and stop it from happening tomorrow? These people are practicing, this actually happens today. There's areas in India that they're practicing child sacrifice today. And the police refuse to go into these towns because there's so many witch doctors that are in full
In
control
Brazil.
of this territory
Friend of
that
mine
there's
told
no
me
law
from
and
the
order.
audience.
So at what point would you let the evil go to the point of saying, you know what, enough is enough, you send the military, you send the cops, and you stop it? Or do you just put a fence around and say, hey, they're free to do what they want, let's just agree to disagree?
Well, you have, if you have morality, you have an obligation to help the people that cannot help themselves. And I will leave it there.
One person eating another person, right or wrong?
Wrong.
Wrong?
I'm going to go with wrong.
Okay. Very good. So we have any more questions, Katie? One or two, maybe? Wow, everyone, okay. Isn't agnosticism a religion?
being a Gnostic is not a religion. Religion is the indoctrination of a belief. Being agnostic is acknowledging that there are unknowns, there are hypotheses that have not been proven, and to accept the fact that you cannot prove everything.
Okay. So back to what I think we were talking about earlier about fulfillment of prophecy, you feel like that's just a subjective interpretation. What they see going on, what Paul and Robert see happening in Israel right now, the desert becoming lush, you feel like, and if he were to do the math on that and say that's impossible, or the odds are 1 out of 1,000,000 or 1 out of 1,000.
The odds are very high. I mean, the fact that we're experiencing it into our lifetime is a possibility amongst many others. There's a lot of different prophecies. There's a lot of hypotheses, estimates. There's a lot of things that happen over time, and the odds of one thing happening out of 1,000,000 of them that you're predicting are very high. Mm-hmm. It's a probability. So yeah, it's a probability.
Paul, what would it take to convince you that Jesus is the Messiah?
Nothing. It could never happen because he's dead and he didn't do the job.
Okay.
Unless there's one thing, one joke which solves the answer. It says, instead of Christians of Jews fighting all the time, persecuting, saying you're wrong, I'm wrong, why don't we pray together and for him to come? And if he shows up, we ask him, have you ever been here before?
Very good.
You gotta, yeah. Okay, we'll do one last question here. Robert, what would it take to? Have you ever doubted Christianity as being the only way? And so, what would it take for you to not believe, to become an agnostic?
Oh, it's too late for that now. I'm 50 years old. Like I said, I've doubted and doubted and doubted. And after a while, the evidence becomes overwhelming. And then you start accepting by faith. But to get me to that point, I was pretty stiff-necked. I was pretty stubborn. It's like, imagine a barrel full of balls and you don't know what color they are. And you take one out and it's white. You take another one out and it's white. You take 1,000,000 of them out and they're all white. There's a point where you say, you know what, all the balls in the barrel are white. And at that point, you start accepting it by faith. So that's happened to me in my life. So in order for me to negate what these Jewish scriptures say as the definitive document for defining right and wrong, is that I would have to start seeing evidence after evidence after evidence of cultures applying these laws and actually causing a lot of human misery and pain and suffering. But all I see is the opposite. The more these rules get applied, the more people prosper. So to me, that the author of this book has proven his love. Just gets more and more cemented over time. I just keep pulling more and more white balls out of the barrel. So I've stopped looking at the color of the ball, but it's not because of blind faith. I'm at that point now, but I wasn't always there. I have a lot of white balls on the shelf that I could point to.
This question just came in, and we have a few more minutes, so I'll go ahead and ask it. Paul said Jesus was only seen by 3 or 4 people after he died. Jesus was actually seen by over 500 people after his resurrection, and they cite 1 Corinthians 15:6.
Good. That's in your Bible. I don't believe anything it says.
Anyone else want to respond to that?
Well, there's a lot of gospels. There's a lot of books that were written by other people that claim to be prophets that did not make it into the Bible. So there's a lot of, the Bible is meant to be open for interpretation, and you've made that interpretation.
Yeah.
Robert, would you want to You were talking about.
Why do I believe the Jews that said that they saw him resurrected? Is that the question?
So the question was for Paul, and he's saying, well, that's your
Opinion.
opinion. That's your text.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah, he's
Is Paul
denying.
500 people. Let's say it did happen.
Okay.
Let's say they did see something they thought. Let's say 500 people did testify and said, we saw this happening. Here in Rancho Santa Fe, there was, 100 people that killed themselves because they believed in something, so that's 100. Then there is, you can go on. I'm sure I can find 10,000 people that believed something that wasn't true.
Yeah.
okay. Let's see what we have here.
So the real question is, why do we believe it?
I'll let you answer it.
Why do we believe it? You got what, 8, 9 Jews that wrote this book, and we're betting our eternal soul. We're betting our humanity, our morality on these words. Why are we so confident?
The question to you is, does what you do work? And you say, okay, I keep doing what this book says, and it keeps working. Does it work because of this 90% or because of this 10%?
It works because of this 100%. Like I said, the reason why I abandoned Judaism is because it did not finish the story. The book ends in an incomplete answer. The only ending to this book that I've been able to find.
The answer is yet to come.
Yes, but I cannot live my life today waiting for instructions in the future. I have to make a determination of what is right and wrong today. So I needed to get an understanding of God's mind, and this book completed that picture so well that I came to the conclusion that whoever wrote this, using the same groups of people, and it was a stumbling block to say that the Jews did not accept this book, because it would have made life a lot easier if all the Jews would have accepted him. It would have made a lot of the confusion go away. So then you start asking, why the confusion? And according to history, mankind has just been stubborn. They just don't get it the first time around. And I'm not speaking pejoratively about the Jews. The Jews are the best moral agents the planet has had. So this is just like Michael Jordan taking the shot. If he misses it, everyone else is going to miss it. So they were the best and brightest theological minds. But it shows that it's not just about information. It's not just about brain power. There's a function where your heart actually needs a new heart. You need a regeneration of your heart. And that takes humanity time. And God is giving us that time to make that conversion.
Do all three of you believe in free will? Does man have free will?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you believe God has free will? I was asked the question.
God has free will.
Yes.
Yeah?
If you believe in God.
Does God have a boss? No, I don't think so.
Okay, cool. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. Was this a lot of fun for you all? Okay, good. I want to thank each of you for coming. If you want to know what I believe, you're going to have to come Sunday mornings, 10:30, to get that viewpoint. And this was every night, or every Tuesday at 6 p.m. We're actually going to be bringing different people up. Robert teaches most of the time. But if you enjoyed tonight, we would invite you to come. This is going to be on YouTube. It'll live there for a while. We're going to get lots of comments. So this will be, it's just a way to get the conversation started. And I think this is going to make us all a lot smarter here. So, all right.
All right.